let's talk about tests. This is part of development, and if you work for some company, you definitely write tests. So what we need to know about test? They written with Jasmine framework. When we run it, it reloaded after changes as we develop an application. To run test, we can use ng test. Okay, now it run, and it will, when it running, it open it Chrome Karma. Here it is, and show us all tests. Tests 1, 2, 3 tests, and show in console the results. So now you can see in console that all succeed tests, and to stop we can use Ctrl+C. When we create using CLI application or components, it adds the spec.ts files for component, for service, here it is also, and predefined some tests. First, what we need to know, that is method before each, which created some loading, add some loading before each test. Next, we can see that we have test method, and what is basic syntax. Let's write one new test. We define it, then we add description, should work, for example, then comma, and we pass a second parameter, lambda function. So now we have correct syntax, and we should fill our test method with configuration and what we expect. For example, here we check that app component loaded, then we detect changes, and we define constant, and using that constant we find selector h1, and we expect that it contains these strings. So what this is basic test. We can run, as I mentioned before, all tests, and we can run only one test. We need to add before test F letter, it means focused run, and then we need to save it and try to run using ng test, and it will run only this test which we marked as fit. Let's try. And you can see that we run only this test. You can see that there are a lot of tests, but we run only should render title. So let's close it, and we can see in console that it succeed. So let's add some tests. Let's see to our app component, and we can see that we have here also variables like string array, factorial number, and Fibonacci number. Let's test it. Array has 4 variables. Array initialized okay, let's try to check it. Const r equals up string array okay, we just copy from here up. We actually don't need this. We can test expect that compile it. Expect stop up string array length to equal 4. This is first. The second, what we can test that array first element equal to create, for example. Okay, so we can test it. We also can test our two variables that they equals 0 0. Okay, so now we can save it and let's try to test. ng test, and we can remove it, can save it, save and run. So we can see that test succeed. So if we want to change, for example, if we change some code, it definitely broke our test. So let's save, and we can see the test filed, and we can see expected for skipped expected 1 to equals 0. This is wrong because we have made some changes. Okay, another thing I would like to discuss, that if we let's discuss about this test. I would like to test only it check our application. Now we may make opportunity to run only it. So now it success, and what I would like to discuss about what happened if we add additional component to application. It breaks our test or not. Let's try to generate additional component. Generate component. Let's call it additional. Okay, let's create it. So we can see that we have additional component, and let's test our test about creating application. We can see that it passed. Okay. So when we add our additional component, it doesn't break our test. So app component test, this is one. But what if we to app component add our additional component? Let's see to our additional component. This is selector. Let's add selector to app component. So now we added it, and let's add 4 additional component h3 and let's save it. Let's save this, and let's see to our app component spec ts, and we test only should create an app. Let's test it. So for now our test is failed. What? Because it doesn't know what is SY additional. So how we can fix this? We can fix this using declaration. As you can see in module ts file, we see in declaration 2 components, but in our test we define only app component. So let's add the second one, and of course import it and save it. Let's see that now our test is passed. And also we can make test for that component inside additional component, or we can create test inside this component. Let's make it test. So here is test which I created. I test additional component header, and I create detect changes, compile it, HTML element, and expect by query selector h3 text context contain additional works. This is what we looking for. So let's save it and fit this and this, delete, and let's try. So the result is no, 0. That's mean current apply, executed y. Yes, I see what the problem, because we already have before h3 and it not equal to our assertion. So let's make it h5 h5 and h5. Let's save. So now it's it. Let's talk about services. When we generate service, it also generates test spec.ts file. Here is description we have before each. Before each we define inject service to variable service, and here is example test. We check that our service injected. Let's try to test our service. We have two methods. Let's test get factorial method. We can test two board test case and test some special value, but actually here can be implemented methods to test more cases, but we not going to do it because this is a simple video. Expect service, get Fibonacci, and let's define 0 and 1, 0 to equal 1, as we can see in logic. It should return 1 for 1 it should return 1, for 2 it should return, and for 3, and Fibonacci should return correct. So let's add f to run just one this test, and let's try to run it. Ng test, and let's see what happened. So we can see that our test failed. Expected 0 to equal 1. To equal 1, expected 0, 2 to equal 1. Stop. So let's check our test. So we saved. Okay. Expected 0 to equal 1. Okay. And run. So yes, it's it now. Let's add 2 additional. So we now it files expected to equals 1. 0 equals 1. Stop. 2. Let's check. Console log. So we can see 1 and 2. 1 and 2. Okay, let's save. Now it's it. So we tested our method. Let's copy and test get factorial 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 here 1 here 2 here 3, for example. Here we factorial. Let's save and try. This we can delete, and let's expected 6 to equal 3. Okay, here is 6. Let's save. That's it. Now it's it. So we tested our 2 methods. Now it covered. Of course we should test more cases, but we cover basic scenario for recursion. This is a scenario when we exit from the loop. And here is also we have basic scenarios and for loop where we calculated other values. We actually can Fibonacci number calculate using also recursion.